Hey everyone, Jake Newton with CPPS here again for another video. And in this iteration, I'm going to talk about some things relevant more for travel risk management, but as well as business in general. You might have seen already, but recently the Biden administration came out with the national security strategy. And you might be asking, why would we be talking about the national security strategy? That has to do with government. Well, yes, that is true, but it also has some ramifications for the private sector that I noticed are particularly relevant in this year's iteration and wanted to share some thoughts with you. So first of all, if you haven't read the national security strategy, it does actually have some fairly good implications for how you might do your business, because it does lay the groundwork for the strategy of our government and how they're going to be prioritizing different issues into the future. And especially if we're talking about travel risk management, the national security strategy has a lot to do with foreign affairs and relationships with other governments and geopolitics. So when we're talking about sending folks abroad for trips for whatever reasons, it does have some ramifications and impacts on those things. And so in this iteration in particular, one thing that they actually put into the national security strategy is renewed emphasis on wrongful detention and hostage situations. Not too long ago, I think it was back in July of 2022, the president signed an executive order, and specifically that is executive order, in case you're wanting to look it up yourself for further research, Executive Order 14078. By title, Bolstering Efforts to Bring Hostages and Wrongfully Detained United States Nationals Home. One of the big things that executive order codified has to do with what we use in the private sector for preparing some of our individuals to deploy abroad, and that is the STEP program, the Safe Traveler Enrollment Program, and the other resources that are provided by the U.S. Department of State for managing travel-related risks. So when you go to travel.state.gov, then there's a lot of different resources on there that we can look at to identify what different issues that we might come across when we're traveling abroad. A lot of these things you're probably familiar with. Well, what this executive order did was actually put in a D indicator labeling risk specifically for wrongful detention. And we'll link that video. So we actually did one previous on this and talked about that in more detail. So we'll put the link out there for you to look at that. However, since then, the national security strategy has been published. And what they talk about in there is the strategy and the priorities in this regard. So they're putting out more information. And one of those is a partnership with Canada in particular. You can look at that, but it's going to be hosting with other nations as well to help renew and build upon emphasis that's been laid in the groundwork in the past to help U.S. citizens that are detained wrongfully abroad to get them back into friendly hands. Now, the national security strategy is a big document. There's a lot of different things in there. But again, I encourage you to read it because there are some different things in there that have implications for travel risk management. If it's laying the groundwork for the country's strategy into the future, it's really good to know how we can align with those things, or at least prepare ourselves for what the government's going to be working on so that we can mitigate any potential risks that may or may not rise based on what the government is doing with other governments and what have you. So there's a lot of different things in there. In terms of who we're going to be competing with, other countries, and a lot of different things. I encourage you to read it. But specifically with this wrongful detention capability, this is the first time in my recollection for the past several years that I've seen the wrongful detention issue or hostage situations from U.S. citizens be included in a national security strategy. So just wanted to bring some attention to that. There's been a lot of advancement in this space over the past several years, and it's wonderful to see the added emphasis here recently. However, if you want to look at some of the history of this, you can look at Presidential Policy Directive 30. That was signed by President Obama, and that stood up the Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell. An interdisciplinary or interagency committee and working group to be able to support families and keep better tabs on folks that are wrongfully detained or held hostage abroad. But what this really does, this strategy the inclusion of this in the strategy and the implementation of this executive order really adds a lot of emphasis onto the wrongful detention considerations. So again, why is this important? Well, it's important to take a look at where the country is going so that you can prepare for your own organizations and for your own organization rather, and have an insight into how you can better prepare, as well as leverage these resources. Maybe if you do have conversations with folks within the State Department as you're trying to plan and prepare for different travel, so you can understand what is available there for you. So I encourage you to take a look at these different documents, study them, get familiar with them. It can really help you prioritize within your program. But anyway, just wanted to bring your attention to it. Thanks for watching, and until next time.